I'm sitting there in this field. I'm bawling my eyes out. I tried nutrition. I tried exercise. I tried yoga. I tried AA. I tried Kaiser. I tried everything. I didn't want to die. I genuinely didn't. But I'm sitting out there like, it's over. I can't beat this. Don't care. And I'm bawling and I'm crying out to God. I submit. I can't do this. Just save me. I'm the problem. I hear a voice yell out to me, what are you doing out there? I turn around and look.
Joey, today we are talking about your story, and you are, what, 7 years sober?
Yeah, 7 years. It'll be 8 years in June.
8 years in June.
Yeah.
Wow. We were talking a little bit when I first met you about your journey, and the part of your journey that stands out to me so much is the cows.
Yeah. I mean,
Rock bottom.
yeah,
Many, right?
there were many rock bottoms. I was the type that I would just push it to see how much further down I could go. I had a true death wish within me. And I kept pushing down to see. I thought I hit rock bottom multiple times, but that was in the end. So I'm from a family of seven kids. I've got 2 older brothers, 4 younger sisters, raised in Sacramento, California. We're raised Catholic. And my journey was really one of seeing just how far down I could go. And I didn't even know why I was doing it while I was in it. But raised Catholic, went to, Catholic mass, altar boy, all of that stuff. I'll get into part of it down the line of something that comes out when I'm about 26 years old. I'd never even thought about this thing. But grew up in a decent neighborhood, went to horribly rough schools, where I was, pretty much I was the only white kid at most of the schools, getting jumped right and left, in fights with huge gangs all by myself. And really what happened to me over my life is I created this really hard shell that I just didn't want the world to get in. I didn't like the world. I had a problem with the way that the world was. I just wasn't happy in life at all. I found life to be sad and tragic. I was the kid that in high school, I'm going to a super rough high school, and my parents decide, well, you need to be an ROTC. So dress up in your cute little Air Force uniform and go march through the halls of a very rough high school. And, it just created trauma after trauma after trauma. I was just traumatized, as a child my entire life, from everything from being molested by a Catholic priest when I was 8 that I didn't even know about because I just blacked it out so deeply. I had no idea about these things. I had just withdrawn to the inside, and just as a young kid, I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be in this world. It was too much for me. It was too difficult. It was too much of a struggle. Just the everyday basic things of just existing in this world were just a massive struggle for me. I'm just at heart just kind of a soft introvert. And I just want to be left alone. And that's really kind of where, the alcohol came into play. I grew up in a family that did not drink. Both my parents had, on my mom's side, more alcoholism than my dad's side. My dad's side was more like functioning alcoholics. Dad would get home from a day of work. His father, my grandfather, and would polish off 6 beers, and that's just kind of the way it went. My mom's family was a little more hardcore, where they had the whiskey out and vodka out, huge drinks, and it really traumatized my mom. And then what that created within our household was I didn't know what alcohol was. I genuinely had no idea. There was one time when one of my dad's uncles came over, and my dad bought him a 6-pack and put it in the fridge, a beer. And I'm like sitting there, I think I was, I don't know, 10 years old. And I'm like, what in the world is this thing? Like, it's so taboo. I've never seen it. I don't know what it is. And my parents were out one night, and I cracked open one of the beers and dumped it down the drain because I was just genuinely curious about this. Like, what is this, And my parents got home, and they immediately noticed one of the beers were gone, woke all the kids up, dragged us all out, and like smelling everyone's breath to see like who drank this. And my younger sister took the brunt of it. That, they're like, she's drunk. I can tell she's drunk. And I just let it go. And it was just, one of those situations where I wish someone would explain to me what alcohol was and why. Maybe you might not want to try this, Joey, because there's something that runs in the family that is pretty devastating. And so, fast forward to probably 18, 19 years old. I move out of the house. I move in with a friend. I couldn't get out of the house fast enough because I just wanted to go live life. I had no idea how to function in the real world at all. I was the guy that was just pushed through school, just like get him out of here, just get him through high school so he can be done and go start his life. I quickly found marijuana and became like a daily stoner, the wake and bake type guy, bong rips all day long.
Oh, I have not heard that term wake and bake for so long.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Just a total wake and baker. It really, in the beginning, it really did kind of expand, my mind. And I just saw how I was just a deeply traumatized person. And it kind of unlocked some things in my brain where I started seeing things differently, and I started questioning everything I'd been taught, especially through Catholicism. And that is really where my like hardcore rebellion started. At a certain point, the weed just didn't even work anymore. I was smoking so much. I was becoming so horribly depressed. Didn't know anything about it. And then slowly started finding beer and would, drink beer and smoke and go to work. I was serving tables at the time, and I was great at it. I could go make a lot of money really quickly and then get back to a party type life. Sleep in the morning, wake up, smoke, go to work at, maybe 4 o'clock and serve tables for 5 hours, make a bunch of cash. And that was pretty much my day. And then I kept moving up. I did a great job. I was always great at sales, and, it's just basically sales. I asked our manager of the restaurant, I was like, yeah, I'd like to bartend. It looks like fun. Those guys make even more money. And so I started doing that. And I immediately told the manager, I was like, I don't like this environment. I don't want to do this. Like, I don't like being around the alcohol. I don't like the feeling of it. I've always been someone that can really like feel energy. I'm very sensitive to it. And I was just in this big bar, packed full of people, and everyone's getting hammered. And I'm just like, I don't like it. This doesn't feel right. I told him I don't want to do it. And I really respected the manager. And he said to me, he was like, someone's stealing from behind the bar. Can you go back there and clean house for me? And I was like, sure, I'll do that. Like, cool. And so I remember one night, it was a packed house, Friday night at a super busy restaurant bar. And I had drank before, but I took a huge shot of whiskey behind the bar. And it's like the heavens opened up for me, man. And like, just
wow.
everything went away. Everything felt good. I was looking around. I was like, man, I really love these people. Everything's great. And it was literally one of the best feelings, that I've ever had, is that whiskey hitting me, calming everything down, forgetting about everything for the time being, and enjoying life. Like, it was one of the first times that I really felt like I enjoyed life. I wasn't tense, I wasn't worried, I wasn't anxious, I wasn't crawling out of my skin like I normally was. And from that day forward, that's when really the nightmare started.
One shot of whiskey behind the bar led to your descent.
Yeah, and that's totally where I pinpointed it, and I still remember it clear as day, of that going down, everything getting good in my head, and being able to function, being able to interact with people, being able to have a conversation with people. A lot of these things that people just take for granted, I didn't have the ability to really do any of that. And so once I had that, I just wanted it more and more and more. And, it turned into, where I was going into work on a daily basis. And that's the first thing I was doing, was starting to drink. I would keep that going throughout the whole shift. And then, it would really get started. We'd walk over to TGI Fridays after that. And, the entire restaurant would go over there, and we would just drink until, 2 a.m. And that became my daily existence. Was I would plan my entire life around alcohol. Everything was planned around alcohol, my jobs, my, everything. And that quickly led to really, really dark places.
Your drinking started in the bar, and you didn't. I feel like maybe you were an introvert and it made you be an extrovert.
Yeah, because we're in a society where introversion is not valued at all. We're looked at the weird ones that are quiet. And I always got how arrogant I was, and I'm a jerk, and I'm like, I'm not. I'm dying inside, and I don't know how to communicate. I don't know how to talk. I feel awkward. You hear it all the time, like, you don't feel okay in your own skin.
Right.
And I didn't feel okay in my own skin. I didn't know why. But I was just dying inside all the time, and alcohol just relieved that. It made me into more of an extrovert, where it just numbed out life. It numbed out just the daily thoughts of life, of, all the thoughts that addicts and alcoholics have running through their head, of, I'm not good enough, I'm stupid, I don't belong here, everything feels off. And alcohol quickly soothed all that. And it just quickly, I just wanted it more and more and more. I wanted it more. It starts out as like a good friend. It's a comforting, soothing, good friend, that's there for you. It'll listen to you. It cares about you. And then it quickly just turned into my worst enemy, total nightmare. I remember going to one of the bars. It's kind of I was like a dive bar type person. Like, put me in a dark dive bar and just leave me alone. I don't care about anyone else, anything else going on. I'm not there to meet people, hit on anyone, none of that. I just wanted to be left alone in my own thoughts that were being soothed from the alcohol. And I remember one of the bartenders that I knew well. I looked up at him one day, and I was like, dude, I think I have a problem. I think I have a problem. And this was pretty early on. Maybe this was like a year and a half, 2 years after drinking. I already knew something was wrong. And he said to me, he's like, there's people way worse than you. You're okay.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? Which you're a bartender, and it's like you see the worst of the worst. So here's this guy being introspective about, you might have a problem with alcohol. And it's like, no, you're cool. Just keep going. And so, I still knew, yeah, you're probably wrong, but I'm just going to keep doing this anyway. And it just started leading to some of those bottoms, that, any sane person would have one of these and they would be like, I can't do this anymore. I have a problem. But the issue that I ran into is I woke up in alcoholism. I woke up one day and I was like, oh no, like oh no, I'm trapped. Like I'm literally trapped in this alcoholism. One of the stories from TGI Fridays is, I would become a morose drunk, as my mom called me one time. She was like, morose, just you just get sad, depressed, everything's
Oh,
terrible. I now looking back on it, I was just a nihilistic alcoholic. Like nothing mattered, everything was terrible. I hate everything. I want to burn this world down with a gallon of gasoline and some matches. And the alcohol would get in me. And one time I was at the TGI Fridays after work and I walked into the bathroom and I just started punching everything. I just smashed the entire bathroom, everything. Mirror, soap dispenser, towel dispenser, screaming in there. And then I walk out like nothing happened. And I go sit down back at the bar to have another drink. And I'm sitting there and I feel this hand on my shoulder. And I turn around and it's a park ranger. He was there. And he said, did you just destroy the bathroom? And I was like, what? Who, me? No, not at all. And he was like, then why are you covered in hand soap? And I was covered in hand soap because I'd smashed the dispenser, soaps everywhere. And I was just like, okay, I'm caught. I don't know what happens now. So that was the first time being arrested. I got arrested. I was taken down to the Sacramento jail. And I mean, what a horrible hellhole, just horrible, horrible hellhole. Sitting in, a jail cell, freezing half to death, the drunk tank. And, they let me go in the morning. The manager from the restaurant walked over to TGI Fridays, smoothed everything out, and it was kind of forgotten about. Like, I don't know. He just got mad and trashed the bathroom. They paid for it. And it was okay.
there was nothing that it was just alcohol that caused you to do that?
Just alcohol, just alcohol. I was never a hard drug person. It always scared me a lot. I was like, if I touch this stuff, I will die. Like I genuinely knew I will die if I get into hard drugs. And so it just didn't interest me. I just really liked the alcohol. And, so that was the first time being arrested. The next time I was I was the guy that liked to drink and drive. I was that terrible guy that would get behind the wheel highly intoxicated and drive. And how I never wiped out a family, like grace of God. Like I should have. I blacked out multiple times behind the wheel and made it home. I was arrested for DUI 3 times. One time I blew a .34, and that was after not drinking for 4 hours. So I was probably up in like the .4 range of most people are dead at that type of BAC. But I could function with massive amounts of alcohol in me, but I wasn't a functioning alcoholic. Like I couldn't get up and go to work. It got to the point where I was drinking, a 750 of vodka starting in the morning just so I could get up and get in the shower and stop the shakes. I would be shaking so uncontrollably that I would have to immediately get up and start drinking in the morning just to function at all. I was in and out of emergency rooms. I went to Kaiser countless times to go get IVs, and they would normally push Ativan on me, which is a benzo. It calms the withdrawal effects. It makes you feel instantly better. But I would then just walk out, feel better, start drinking all over again, because I was just so mentally and physically and spiritually trapped in alcoholism. Um, and the stories just continued to get worse and worse and worse. Which I always had, typically I'd have a girlfriend that would care about me enough and would leave me alone enough to allow me to drink. That was my main goal in life, was to continue to drink. And so, like I said, I just shaped my life around alcohol. And it got to the point, about 5 years in, of I'm gonna die. Like I'm literally going to die. I don't want to be this person. I don't want to do this anymore. But something it just would not let go of me. It wouldn't let go of me. I could pull together a couple years, even 2 years of sobriety, 2 years, a year, 6 months, and I would always relapse. Right when that alcohol would hit my lips, I just became a totally different person. Because even when I was sober, it's just like I had this massive hole,
Right.
just this massive hole within me, um, that I was just trying to numb out. And later on, I figure out what that is after the cow incident. And that incident was, I could do more bottoms along the way, but they're just, they're your typical, I got popped for another DUI. My life is over again. I've got an interlock device on my car, or I can't drive for a year. I'm taking a bus to go work at Nordstrom, where I was a salesman over there, where I continued. I just walk to a bar at lunch and take breaks constantly from Nordstrom. Um, and they knew I was doing it. My managers knew, the store manager knew, but I was such a damn good salesman and my numbers were so fantastic. And I would just keep getting letters from customers about how great I was. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, I'm drunk all the time, guys. I'm literally always drunk. And so my life is just a complete disaster. I end up moving back in with my parents multiple times. I had very loving parents.
I was gonna ask about that. So like all this time you felt so like empty pretty much, but your parents were loving. So do you just think that you were born depressed?
Um, I think it's multiple things. I think some of us are born very introspective, and you see the world for what it is at a younger age, and you suffer trauma at the hands of someone that is godly, you
Right.
know, that is supposed to protect you and lead you and guide you. And that, I didn't even know that happened until I was about 27 years old. I was living with, at the time, one of my friends that worked for a fire department out there that was a massive alcoholic himself. And so our alcoholism together was just totally normal. But I was highly intoxicated one night, and my mom knew I was, and she came to pick me up, because she would see when I was so bad that, like, if she didn't do something, that I would die. I was going to die. And I remember being picked up by her, and I just, out of nowhere, I'd never thought about this in 19, 20 years. And I tell my mom, I was molested by a Catholic priest when I was 8 years old. I had the name of the priest, the time of it, and this all just came blurting out of my mouth. I had never one time thought about this ever. And it just comes blurting out of my mouth. And, from there, my mom's just looking at me like I just destroyed her entire belief system right there in the car. And, interesting part of that is, my mom immediately gets on the phone with the Catholic diocese in Sacramento and be like, we need to come meet with you. And so we go in there, we have a meeting. The first person that walks in is the lawyer for the Catholic diocese in Sacramento. I tell her what happened, what I could recall. Everything lines up perfectly from my age to the time that this priest would have been there. And again, I'd never thought about this, not one time. Everything lines up. And she says, yeah, we had him. He's been on our radar.
Oh my gosh.
Your radar? Like, what? And she's like, I need to excuse myself for a moment. And she goes and talks to, I don't know if he was the cardinal or whoever runs the diocese there. His last name was Soto. And she comes back in and she says that she has to retract what she just said, that that's not true. And so the lies from the Catholic Church just came barreling in. They got super aggressive with me. They wanted me to think that I was insane.
Of course.
Like I'm the problem,
Like the victim is shamed, but the perpetrator is always excused.
100%. And that's their MO over there is, that's what they do. They're the pedophilia there is just, it's massive once you start looking into it. So we go find a lawyer, and we find a lawyer in town that is a psychologist and a lawyer that represents victims from the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church. He interviews me. He's doing what he knows to do, which is basically make sure I'm not full of crap. And so he's drilling me. He's, doing all the things, watching eye contact, how I act, the things I say, do I, backtrack, all these things. And he tells my mom, like, this guy's telling the truth. And I still cannot, to this day, I'm still completely blacked out about the incident. There's a few things I can briefly remember, but my mind has just completely compartmentalized that. It's like, dude, you don't want to see, you don't want to know. And so it's always protected me from what actually happened. But everything lined up perfectly. We file a lawsuit against the diocese. They do like some piddly payout just to get me to go away. Shut your mouth, go away. Basically, we'll ruin your life. And I'm like, whatever, cool. I got X amount of dollars. I'm going to go drink. I've got drinking money. That's where my mind went. Like, I have an excuse now to be an alcoholic. This is my reason why I'm an alcoholic. And this is why it's okay for me to be an alcoholic. So it really made everything worse because I genuinely had a reason. If anyone wants to come at me, I can tell you a sob story. Was it a sob story? Sure. But it gave me this reason to be an alcoholic and no one could ever touch me. It just made me like bulletproof. And it sent me into a deep, 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 dark, dark depression. Because I start then researching, the Catholic Church, start digging, and you find out very, very quickly. There's this network. It's called SNAP, Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. And you go on there and you just read these stories and you start communicating with these other men.
Wait, hold on. There's a literal program called SNAP because of this.
Because of this, SNAP, yeah. And it's the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests.
Why is this a thing? Like, how is this a thing?
They're good at what they do. They're very, very good at covering things up. They even have places they send repeat abusing priests too. There's one in New Mexico, and they send the worst of the worst down to New Mexico, and they live with nuns, and they are rehabilitated there. Rehabilitated. It's like you can't be rehabilitated from this. And those that can't be rehabilitated just stay there and live out their lives until they die. Otherwise, you're put back into the Catholic Church to continue on being a priest. And this is well known once you start looking into these things. There's a huge network that protects priests from the top down. And once you start, getting into that, it truly fractures your entire world belief. Like your entire belief system is fractured. And so I just got drugged down deeper and deeper and deeper into alcoholism, because I didn't want to live. I didn't want to live. If this is what the world is, if this is what God is, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Something in me is saying, don't kill yourself. There was one time when I'd moved to, that was my thing too. I would move. Like I moved to Hawaii. I went to South Africa. I moved all over the place because I was running from it. And I thought if I went somewhere I liked, I could maybe be better. But, everywhere I went, there I was. It was still me. It was still all the trauma. It was still all the issues. It was still the alcoholism. And,
you can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like I said, anywhere you go, there you are. Like right. you can't run from this. And, I was living in Hawaii. My parents had moved to Hawaii. I just got back. I was working in South Africa, where I went to South Africa. I thought I was going to stay there. I had a killer job. I just couldn't stop drinking there either. And the guy that brought me over to South Africa, we were building downhill mountain bike tracks and BMX tracks leading up to the London Olympics. These were qualifier events. And so I have a super, super rad job. Like the Red Bull guys are there, all these pro athletes. I'm doing, I'm given this rad Jeep Cherokee, go do what you want, go build. It didn't matter. Like I just drank and drank and drank and drank and totally squandered that opportunity. And so I get back to the United States because the guy that owned the company could, the writing was on the wall, and he was just like, yeah, time to go back. And I'm like, damn, because I sold everything I had to get over there. I was just going to stay there. And so I got back to nothing, moved in with my sister. She quickly saw how bad I was. She was like, I can't do this. I love you, but I can't do this. And so my last option was, well, my parents had moved to Hawaii. And I was like, you guys, my mom was like, just come stay with us in Hawaii. It's beautiful out here. The sunshine will be good for you. Maybe you can get better out here. There's the ocean. I'm like, yeah, this is really going to be different. It's going to be great. Of course, I get over there. There I am, horribly depressed, even in the most beautiful environment you could imagine. I'm living on Waikiki. And again, all I was doing was drinking. I mean, I was walking from ABC store. And if you know the ABC stores in Hawaii, it's just their like supermarket, convenience stores, and just buying Sapporo, lots of Sapporo over there. And I would just buy tall cans of Sapporos. I would walk to like the next, Hilton Gardens, or, the Hiltons. And I would go into the bathroom, into a stall, and just pound these beers just to feel better for a moment, just a moment of feeling better. And I got a job at Starbucks over there because, I could barely function. Drinking there. And my thing is I would just start drinking and just straight up walk out of a job. Be like, I'm done with this. I did that with every job when I was drinking. And then this girl that I knew calls me, and she's like, hey, I'm going to fly out there and see you. And I'm like, cool, this sounds great. She comes and visits, and, again, it's like, oh, something new, something different. Maybe this person can save me. Maybe it's going to be a woman that saves me from me. And I end up moving to Washington with her. And that was probably my rock bottom depression, was living in Washington. I mean, it's a depressing place anyways. Like, and it's all the way up north in Vancouver. I'm like, I hate it that far up there anyways. I need at least sunshine to function in some way.
Like, I get it because we came from Oregon and it's like so wet and dark and
Yeah.
rainy and ugh,
And that's how I'm feeling out here in Idaho now.
right
Like,
now.
it's tough for me. It's tough for me, but it's different now. But out there, I remember one night she had left. She was like, I'm leaving. Like, I know this is my apartment and you're here, but I'm leaving. You need to leave. And I'm like, cool, let me figure that out. Like, I have no money, no nothing. I'd spent all the money I had on booze. And I'm just sitting there and I pick up my 45 that I had and I'm just staring at this gun. Like, I can't do that. Like, I can't do this anymore. The pain is too great. Like, the pain's just too great. And I want to end it all. And back up a few years, I had met who's now my wife. And we had met under the worst circumstances, of course. We had met at a young friend's funeral, a mutual friend. We didn't even know each other, my wife and I. At the time, we didn't know each other, but we had met. And we're at this wake of a 26-year-old friend that was completely loaded on whatever the patches are that they put you on, morphine patches, maybe it was. She was a hardcore alcoholic, drug addict, super traumatized, all the stuff. And so this friend dies in a fire. And I meet my wife soon, what will be my wife, 8 years later at this funeral. We meet, we hit it off a little bit, but I know deep down inside, keep this girl away from you because you will only hurt her. Like, you'll only hurt her. And I didn't want to. I didn't want to hurt people. I genuinely didn't, but I was just so damaged. Like, I will hurt you. And so we go our separate ways, but we always stay in contact. And I could always call her. And she wasn't super shocked by the alcoholism because her dad had 36 years sobriety.
Wow.
And in AA. And so all she knew growing up was AA. So she sees an alcoholic like me and she's like, I love him. That's what she grew up with. She's like, I love him. And thank God, because she knew way more than I did. And she said from the beginning, she was like, that's going to be my husband. And I'm like, stay away from me, woman. Like, I will hurt you.
They say you marry someone like your father.
Exactly. And so she sees me and she's just like, okay, cool. Well, I can fix him, because, she's got, the what's it called? The codependence. Came from a very codependent family. And so her trauma is codependence. Mine is massive alcoholism. And so, yeah, it meshes up well. I'll fix him one day. And that was kind of her thought. But at this night that I'm staring at my 45 in Washington, I call my mom and she was like, call Brienne, just call her. And that's my wife. Definitely, not at the time. I'm, just out there destroying my life. But she was like, call Brienne. And being able to hear her voice just completely brought me off of that ledge of, I don't want to do this anymore. My life is such a disaster. I just want to end it all right now. So, fast forward a little bit, I moved back to Sacramento and I commit myself to her. Like, okay, I feel safe with this person. This person cares about me. This person gets me for some weird reason. And I feel safe around her. And I didn't get sober. I got 2 years sober at that point. We moved in together. I was drinking pretty heavily with her. She was the type that she would drink too. She would get to the point like, this guy's going to drink anyways. I love this guy. I'll just go drink with you. You know what? Like, you're going to do it anyways. I'll go hang out with you. Okay. But she quickly saw just how bad, I truly was. And then it got to the point where we've got to get you better. Like, we have to get you better. And so, really started all the things. I tried AA multiple times. multiple times, inpatient rehab. I mean, I ended up finding this psychiatrist that put me on antidepressants, antipsychotics, all at the same time. You know, he's like, yeah, just everything you can imagine, like these hardcore antipsychotics, which made everything worse. You know, talk about like another deep, dark place of being on antidepressants, antipsychotics, and alcohol, and being so lost, like so incredibly lost that nothing makes any sense. Nothing makes any sense. You don't see how you can get out of this hole that you dug, and you're just incredibly sick. And so, you know, that was another kind of one of those real low spots. But, you know, I stayed with my wife. We had some real, my girlfriend, she was just my girlfriend. I was scared as death to get married because I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to function. What am I going to do? Have a wife and kids? Like, yeah, let's not do that. At least, you know, if I die and I destroy my life, at least I only die and destroy my life. I don't need to bring a family into this destruction. But, you know, I slowly get better. You know, one of the changing points for me was when I reached out to one of my buddies one day that was he was an ethnobotanist at UC Davis, and he just studies plants. And I'm like, dude, this is what's going on with me. For the life of me, I cannot stop drinking. He was like, yeah, try what you would call magic mushrooms, you know, psilocybin. Try psilocybin. Here's some, try it. It's the only thing that started working. That's it.
Oh.
It's the only thing. Like from that moment on, I started to get some clarity. I could see how destructive I really was. It started to lift this dark veil that was pulled over my eyes where I literally couldn't see anything. I was walking in complete darkness. And so I started experimenting with something called the Stamets stack, and it's a micro dose of psilocybin, niacin, and lion's mane. And it's been proven to treat PTSD in soldiers, just has all these huge benefits. And it just started to, it gave me what I call is like an interrupter in my brain where I could for a moment think, don't touch the alcohol, don't touch the alcohol, don't touch the alcohol. And I just started to slowly build upon that. I started doing yoga. I started doing this Kundalini yoga. I started meditating. I just started doing these things that started to clear my mind so I could function, like, so I could just strictly like function. I got married to my wife. And then the alcoholism still wasn't gone. It still wasn't at bay, leading to, you know, kind of the last time I drank. You know, I'd been married to my wife for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. We had a beautiful house in a beautiful area on Folsom Lake and outside of Sacramento. Just gorgeous life, gorgeous, you know, wife. I had started a business about 6 years back. I was building that up really well. I didn't know how to deal with stress. I didn't still really know how to deal with the trauma. But I was doing it, you know, I was okay. I was okay. Like I said, I could pull together 6 months of sobriety, a year, and I would relapse. But leading to, you know, my total bottom, you know, we had our first baby, Dylan, and I was probably about a year sober, you know, when we had him. And the stress of that just became like, I didn't know how to live. I was still a traumatized little boy inside. You know, I was probably a 13-year-old, 15-year-old inside. You know, that's like where my mental capabilities and my emotional, you know, baseline was, probably a 15-year-old boy. I mean, I was a disaster still. I didn't know how to function. I didn't know how to have a wife. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to have a son. And about 6 months in, like, the pressure was just too much, and I started to drink again. And I come home one day, and my wife's sister was watching Dylan, 6 months old, and my wife was at work, and I was like, I got it. I'd had some beers, but, like, again, you could put 2 bottles of vodka in me and I could still function. And a lot of people wouldn't even know, like, there was anything wrong with me. And so she leaves, and I need more alcohol. And so I put my son in the truck and take him down while I'm intoxicated to go get more alcohol from Albertsons. And it hit me at that point. Thank God nothing happened, just thank God. But it hit me like, you just did what you said you would never do. Like, you always told yourself you would never put your child in harm,
Mm-hmm.
And I loaded him up in the truck. We cruised on down. I got more booze. I came back home, and I continued to drink again. And my wife got home, and she could tell, she was the type that could tell through my text messages if I were drinking or not. So, like, I couldn't hide anything from her, and she instantly knew I was drinking, which then the alcohol is threatened at that point. Like, she's threatening to take away my alcohol, and that cannot happen because I'm going to go through the worst withdrawals ever imaginable. Like, my withdrawals were just so brutal. Like, I would never wish that on my worst enemy. So I'm going into work. I'm stopping at the bar, drinking in the morning, getting more booze, going to the warehouse that I have for my business, sitting in there drinking, thinking I'm hiding it, and I'm not, of course. And then, I concoct this plan of, I need to go down to Santa Barbara to pick up some equipment for the business, which I did, but, like, I didn't at the same time. I wanted to get away and drink. And so I just bought this brand new, like, $150,000 refrigerated Mercedes Sprinter, like, just this big, awesome. I know it sounds kind of dorky, a big refrigerated van, but the thing was just sick. It's just this big, massive van. And so I load up into that. I'm like, babe, I got to go do this. Leave me alone. It's for work. And I drink the entire way on the way down there. It's about 110 out. I'm stopping and buying slushies and filling them, drink half vodka and just drinking the entire way. And at a certain point in the middle of nowhere in Kings County, I pull over on, it's like a freeway, but it's not a freeway. It's just like a busy-ish, like, country freeway, if you will. I pull over in the middle of nowhere, park the van, grab my vodka, and I just climb over this big fence, and I go way out into this field. And I'm sitting there, bawling my eyes out. Like, as far as I'm concerned, it's over. Like, it's over. This thing has me beat. Like, I tried everything I could to beat it. I tried supplementation. I tried nutrition. I tried exercise. I tried yoga. I tried AA. I tried Kaiser. I tried everything because I didn't want to die. I genuinely didn't. I didn't want to die, but I'm sitting out there like, it's over. Like, I can't beat this. It's shown me that it's in control, and I'm bawling my eyes out. And like, I'm sitting there in this field, and 100 head of cattle walk up to me. Like,
the cow story.
The cow story, the craziest thing that's really ever happened to me. I'm sitting there on the ground, Indian style, staring up, and all these cows walk over, all right? And they all line up, like, cows as far as you can see. I'm like, where are these all coming from? What is going on here? And I'm thinking to myself, like, I think they're going to stampede me. Like I'm sitting here and I don't care and I'm bawling and I'm crying out to God. Just like I submit. I can't do this. Just save me, save me, save me, save me, save me from myself. I'm the problem. I finally saw that, like, I'm the problem. I can blame it on anything, but I'm the problem. Deep down inside, I'm the problem. Staring at these cows, they have massive eyes. They're all looking back at me. And I'm just thinking, I'm either going to die or something's going to happen. And as I'm just bawling my eyes out, because I think it's all over, like, I'm so highly, highly intoxicated at this point. Like, I can't function. Bawling my eyes out, God, please save me. God, please save me. And I hear a voice yell out to me, what are you doing out there? I turn around and look, and it's a CHP officer, the California Highway Patrol. And then up rolls another one and another one and another one and another one. And so I've got 5 CHP officers that roll up on me. And I knew at that point it was all over. Like, I tried to lie my way out of it, of course, with the CHP officers, but they didn't care, and I wasn't even driving, but, you can, put 2 and 2 together and figure out what's going on here. And I just knew, like, this peace kind of came over me of, you're found out. Like, you're found out and it's over. And so I'm arrested out there. They ask to breathalyze me. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Walk the line. No, I'm not going to do that. I know my rights. You can't, I don't have to do these things. And they're like, yeah, well, we're going to arrest you and take you back to the jail. And the entire time, I learned later that my wife's tracking my, the iPhone app. And I'm sitting out in this field for an hour and a half, not moving. And she's watching it. And then I start moving back the other way that I was driving, going towards what is the county jail and the morgue, because they're the same then. And so my wife tells me, she was like, I either thought you were dead and going to the morgue, or you had been arrested. And she found peace in that too. It was really weird. We both found kind of peace at the same time. And so I'm arrested. They kick me out at 2:33 in the morning. They take my license away. So I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I have no license. I can't even go rent a hotel room for the night, for the remainder of the night. And so I'm walking the streets of this desolate town in the middle of nowhere, going through withdrawals, thinking that my life is just totally over. I go get my van out of impound the next morning, drive back to Sacramento. On my way back, I look over and there's a bottle of vodka still in the van. And I was like, nope, I'm not doing it. I was shaking on the way, and I've got a 5-6 hour drive, and I'm like, I'm not touching it. I'm not touching it. And that was the moment in that field that the obsession with alcohol was taken away from me. It was just gone. Like, all the trauma was still there. All the problems were still there. Everything I would have to deal with over the next year was still there. But the obsession to drink was instantly gone. It just went away. And that was truly the day that, like, my life just changed. And it wasn't from anything I did.
Was it, was it the first time that you cried out to God to, like, help you?
It was, but it was in a different way. I'd always been seeking God. But I was so damaged from Catholicism that I did not believe that Jesus Christ was the way. I mocked it just constantly. I thought it was such a joke. Like, the last thing I wanted it to be was the way to God. I wanted it to be a softer, easier, gentler way. Like, oh, I go do yoga and I stretch and I do chants, and somehow that's going to get me to God. And I believed it would, through like a spiritual way, so I became very, as it's called, very new age. I was very new agey, doing Kundalini, doing all these different things along the way to this cow incident. And it did somewhat work. I'm genuinely not knocking it for the things that it did do for me. It did do some really good things doing yoga and Kundalini specifically. But what I learned is, because if I back it up just 2 weeks before I left for the trip, I started drinking. My wife called the local church and found Celebrate Recovery. I didn't know what Celebrate Recovery is. I just heard it was a Christ centric, I don't even remember what the words in my head were, recovery program. And I'm like, cool, I will go do that, because I just put my son in a vehicle with me to drink and drive and go get more booze. I know I'm not in control at this point. I know that. But I still can't stop it. And so I go to this program for about a week, maybe 2 weeks prior to all of this. And I start hearing the name Jesus. And I'm like, I hate this. Like, I hate hearing this name. I hate it. I hate it. It makes me feel so uncomfortable. I think you're all weird. I think you don't know what you're talking about, you guys. And I don't know. It makes me feel so uncomfortable. But I started hearing that name in there. And I see these people. And the guy that's running the program, his name was Jason. And prior to him leading this program, he was drug out of his apartment by his boss. He had been passed out in there for a day. He was on death's doorstep. And he was like, he would start every Celebrate Recovery with, give it 6 weeks. And if you don't like the results, we'll refund your misery. Like, straight up. Like, if you want to go be miserable and have a horrible life, go do it. And so when I was out in that field, I had the thought not just to call out to God, but to call out to God through Jesus Christ, because that's what I was told. And that's the day everything changed. And I can't explain it outside of that. That was the day everything changed. I get back to Sacramento. My wife has Bible verses all of a sudden up on the wall, because she spent the day, she went shopping. She wanted me to come home. Like, she just wanted me to come home and feel okay, feel safe. Like, it's going to be okay. And she was raised Christian. And so her thought was like, well, I don't know. Let's turn to this. Let's embrace this. And I walk in and there's Bible verses up on the wall. And I'm like, I kind of hate this, but okay. It was soothing me in this weird way. And I really just, after the cow incident, gave in to going to Celebrate Recovery. And it turned out to be just the most beautiful program I could have ever imagined, with the most beautiful, caring, loving, kind people in there. And, I wasn't really hearing a whole lot of what they were saying. I wasn't really hearing, I couldn't understand much at all. But I liked going there. The music that this one girl, she had the straight voice of an angel. Like, her voice was so powerful that I'd sit there and cry. I would just cry. And then I'd hear these testimonies of people that were where I was at, and they're not there anymore. And all these people could say is, it's not through me. Like, I didn't do this. It's a total miracle. It's by the grace of God through Christ. And I'm still like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I hate all of this. It can't be Christianity. Like, my brain was just like, this cannot be the way. This does not make sense. I don't want this to be the way. And pretty quickly I remember listening and doing what I'm told. And I went into prayer, and I went into prayer to Jesus Christ. And I remember in my mind laying myself in front of him and just exposing all of my sin, like exposing what I had done, exposing like what was really in my heart, my selfishness, my self-centeredness. I want what I want. And all the bad things I had done, especially when I was an alcoholic. I mean, my alcohol really just turns off your conscience. It's like everything goes, nothing matters. And I just laid it all out in prayer at that time. And since then, like since this, kind of few week period of all of this happening, I've never touched alcohol again. I've just never touched it. I've never wanted to. I can look at it, I can be around it. It doesn't scare me. I don't want to tempt it. None of those things. It was just all gone. And to this day, it's just still shocking to me. And now, I'm in Boise, Idaho. I've got just the most beautiful family that anyone could ever ask for. Like, I have everything I need. I have a beautiful wife. I have 3 beautiful, healthy children. I'm healthy. I own a coffee shop roastery in Boise. And
which we ship out to my people.
yeah, absolutely. I hope everyone's enjoying it there.
Yeah. And those that are local that watch this, he's just your disciples down in Garden City.
Yeah. Disciple Coffee in Garden City. I started a Christian values coffee shop. I'm just like, who is this person? Literally, who is this person? I go to church and I understand it now. I go to a biblical church where the pastor speaks the word. And I remember the first time we went to this church, I didn't want to go to church. I was, kind of believing in Jesus Christ for a few years there, but that was it. I didn't want to go to church. I didn't want to be around Christians. I still didn't truly believe. I feel like I didn't know what it was. We tried a couple of different churches and I had a straight up panic attack at one of them. Actually, both times I went into one church. We dropped our kid off, our son in with in the kids ministry. And from there, all of the molestation stuff came rolling back. I was like, I can't do this. I freaked out. Like, I grabbed our kid. I stormed out of there. I'm fighting with my wife in the parking lot of this church. And the church didn't feel correct to me. And that's really, I was being told, like, this isn't the correct place for you. And I freaked out. She had a friend, my wife had a friend that was going to a church, and she's like, just come try it. Just come try it. And I knew my wife wasn't going to stop. And I knew that, this was at the time COVID was going on. The world's falling apart. I'm like, I think the world's just going to literally fall apart at this point. I need to at least put these kids around what I felt was better people. Okay. Let's get around better people. Fine. My wife can go have friends at the church. Awesome. I'll maybe go. I don't know. I walk in there to this church. It's called Compass Bible in Boise. At the time, it was in a junior high auditorium. So we roll into a junior high auditorium, and I'm just like, what in the world is this? The pastor starts. Again, I'd never really heard the word. No one had ever delivered it to me. You don't get that in Catholicism. And he's preaching on Ecclesiastes. I have no idea what Ecclesiastes is, but I'm sitting there listening. He starts his sermon by like, how many of you don't trust the government? And I'm like, dude, you've got my attention, sir. Because that's me, straight conspiracy theorist, all the things. I'm like, you have my attention, sir. Go on. And he starts preaching the book of Ecclesiastes. And the main takeaway from it that I get is, the world's a disaster. It's supposed to be this way. It's not your job to change it. And, just everything else that Ecclesiastes says, which, really is like, you live in this world, you're going to die. The world is kind of false. It calls it vapor, mist. And you're going to die and pretty much no one's going to remember you. Like, how does that feel? And I'm like, okay, I can dig that. I got that. But there's salvation here for you. There is a way back to God. And what I realized is I don't have to fix this world. This world is a disaster for a reason. It's a disaster because of the human heart. Like, we're the disaster. Like, the human heart, you hear in, the new ageism, follow your heart, follow your heart. It's like, do not do that. Your heart will deceive you. The heart wants what it wants. It's a lie. And it blew my mind that day. And after that day, I just wanted more of whatever he was talking about. I think I've missed 3 days of church in 5 years.
Wow.
I mean, we go to like a life group. We do all these things that, my heart does not want to do. It doesn't want to do those things. It never did. But like I go, every time I leave Compass, my mind is genuinely blown. And I'm like, it all started making sense. It all started making sense. And like my life that I live now is just night and day. And if I would have heard this myself speaking to, on a podcast 10 years ago, I'd be like, this guy is so lame. He's so lame. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That's not it. It's all a lie. There is no single way to God. But I have the evidence, the experience of it turns out it is.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just straight. That's what happened. That was my story. And now that I look back on it, I was being carried that entire time. I was just a disobedient, rebellious. I have a disobedient, rebellious heart. When you add alcohol to that, I'm a nihilistic. I want to burn this world to the ground because I see no beauty in it. And now it's like the Lord is slowly changing me into something different. And I can't believe it. So, it's really a story of redemption. It's really a story of God doing for me what I could not do for myself. And I tried and tried and tried and tried. And one day it was just removed from me. And I've never touched it again to this day. And it's just, it's just a great story, and I can't take any credit for it, which is great. It was done for me. I didn't do it. I didn't save myself. And so that's just, I feel like where the power of it all comes in is so many alcoholics and addicts are out there trying to do it themselves. And a lot of people abstain from, they can figure out how to abstain. My father-in-law really figured out how to abstain through AA. And there's a lot of people that figure out how to abstain, but a lot of those people are still, living these kind of, he's not one of them. He found Christ early on, but you're just living still this hollow life. And yeah, it's just still shocking to me where I am today when I should have been dead 20 times. I should have been dead so many times. I can't even count them.
But you are here for a reason. And I remember the first day that I met you, I saw you with the sparkling water in a coffee shop meeting to do business with you. And I was like, this guy obviously has a story. He's carrying around a sparkling water. And then we started talking, and then the cows, it just has stuck with me since. And I was like, gosh, I cannot wait to get him on to tell his story.
Well, it was so funny because I didn't know why you guys were really there. I knew, you wanted coffee, and you knew someone from my church somehow that knew I could do coffee for you guys for what you needed. And then you're like, oh yeah, I do a recovery podcast. I'm like, really? Okay, yeah. And then I just obviously want to spill my guts because I want people to know that there's hope. There is hope because it's the darkest, just most brutal disease that I feel like anyone could ever have. You go to anyone and they don't know how to treat you. I remember one time it was one of my Kaiser trips to the ER, and it was looking back on it, I was like, I'm really glad she said that to me. But one of the doctors was like, I've dealt with 5 of you today. People just like you. I know, right? She's like, I've dealt with 5 of you today. There is nothing I can do for you. Just get out. And I was like, how dare you? And then I walk out and I'm like, she's not wrong. She's not wrong. And at that, that was one of those moments, like, I was like, oh, you're all alone, and it's like, yeah. So, if you're in that deep, dark alcoholism or addiction, like, I highly recommend Celebrate Recovery, even if you think it's ridiculous and that can't be the way.
And I love that you say that because I guess I haven't really had anybody on that has talked about Celebrate Recovery. It's either AA or inpatient, outpatient, or,
Right.
just willpower. I don't know, but nobody has ever talked about celebration, or Celebrate Recovery, and, I think that's a really good tool because so many people find Jesus through this journey, and, I mean, whatever
Absolutely.
your higher power is, most people like, everybody talks about a higher power, and most of us that come on here, like, I didn't get sober until I found Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap.
Yeah. And you'll hear that story over and over and over and over again. And after you hear it over and over, you're like, maybe it's true. Just maybe this is true. Maybe the Bible is actually correct. And I didn't want it to be. Again, like, I did not want it to be. I fought it tooth and nail. I did not want it to be. And it was. So Celebrate Recovery was just, it bridges that gap. It's an easy way for people like myself that just straight up don't believe, but you're so beaten down, you're so over everything that you'll try something. And it's just a gentle way in because you're not beaten over the head with scripture that you don't understand. It's just a gentle way in around really good people that genuinely care about you and are different. I mean, I went to AA so many times, and it's like everyone just wants to rehash their stuff all day long forever. And it's like you never recover. You're always in recovery. And it's
Right.
like, no, I'm recovered from alcoholism. If I started drinking again, would it trigger whatever it is in me? And I have a theory that, gets off, but it's something called the MTHFR gene mutation that a lot of alcoholics have and don't even know that they have it. And that's what triggers that alcohol to react differently in your body. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, if I touch alcohol, I know I'm going to want more alcohol.
Yeah,
But if I
same.
don't touch it, everything's cool and I don't even want it. And I can go sit at like a nice wine bar with my wife and have a sparkling water and watch her enjoy herself a little bit. And I get joy from that. It's cool,
Yeah.
So
You are definitely a walking, like, testimony and redemption for sure.
yeah, it was such a, wild, wild story, wild ride that I can't believe I'm out of it because there were just so many times I'm like, there's no, I can pretty much do anything I set my mind to. I truly can. I shock myself at some of the things I can do that I have no idea how to do, but I'll just dig down and do them. I thought I could do that with alcohol. It was the one thing, it's kryptonite. It's just straight up
Yeah.
no. Like
And
it's
I wish more people would understand that it literally it has the power over you. You don't have the power over it. So
exactly.
like you've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And whether that's crying out to Jesus in a field full of cows,
All right. Weird, right?
like that was your sign. That was your like I don't know, it gave me goosebumps when I first heard that. I was like, "Holy crap." Like I don't get stories like that every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just something else. And it's like it's interesting because in certain religions the cow's a very sacred animal. And it's interesting to have all these cows staring at me, and that's the moment everything changes. So it was just I'm just grateful to be here. And yeah, just to be able to say what I genuinely think the truth is, which is we can get to God through Jesus Christ. I tried every other way. I tried everything. I tried Buddhism. I tried, Sikh, just these different religions. I really looked into them. I'm like, there's got to be a way outside of Christianity to get to God. I couldn't find it. It didn't work. And then once I figured out what if it is like the Bible says through Christ, I try that and it works. So take that for what you will, like
Yeah.
You know, if people want to think, well, that's crazy, that's not the way it is. Well, I'm telling you, it is for me and a lot of people I know. So maybe give it a shot. You know, go sit in
Right.
the rooms of a Celebrate Recovery. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. You know, the alcoholics and addicts always kind of have the cool, funny stories, if you will. Like, you always have the good stories. There is fun in them. You know, it's like I look back to a lot of my stuff, and I did have a lot of fun during alcoholism. You know, it wasn't just all awful, it became all awful, but there were a lot of fun things in that too. But, and so we have the fun stories, the interesting stories to tell. The codependent women really have some very, very brutal, brutal stories where it has to do with children and, you know, husbands beating them and leaving them and, you know, going right back to that with another man. And so you see just the change in, and then, you know, there's, which I didn't know this before I went there. I didn't know there was such a problem with porn. I didn't.
It's funny that you bring that up because somebody's like, I think you should, bring porn into your conversations. I'm like,
It's one of those, I mean, and us chemical dependent guys, we were judgmental about that. And so there is a lot of judgment around that. And, you know, we would even be like, why can't you be like normal guys and just get hammered? You know, just like, go get drunk, dude. Like, why do you have to look at porn all day? Go get drunk. And so, but I'm learning more and more that it's like a massive, massive, massive problem. And so, you know, there's groups for guys like that too.
in
You
Celebrate
know,
Recovery.
yeah, you go break out into the group that you identify with. And there's a lot of support there, and you find a lot of people like you. And that's what did it for me. That's when everything changed, is really when I started Celebrate Recovery. So there's a lot more than just alcoholics in there. Actually, there were more other types of people dealing with their addictions than addicts and alcoholics in there.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, you know, and I've just even, you know, because I believe that, like, you do recover from these things. I genuinely believe, and you don't need to be in recovery your entire life. I think you recover from these things and you move on. You move on with your life. But, you know, there were times where I'd go back and, you know, sit in a Celebrate Recovery, and it's just peaceful and nice, and you can see where, you know, you were at through other people, and it brings you back to a deep state of gratitude
Right.
for where you're at now.
Exactly. And that's like why I love doing this, because it just keeps me going. Like, it
Yeah,
keeps me sober. It keeps me like I'm like, oh my gosh, that was me through
right.
other people's stories. Like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm
yeah.
glad I'm here, and I like don't ever want to go be that person again.
No, it's just such a deep, dark place that, and you can always, you know, you can always go deeper and darker. And for some reason, something in me wanted to, like, it just wanted to go deeper and darker. And let's see how bad, let's go to the depths of hell. I guess that was my personality. Like, let's go see what it's like there. Um, and, you know, now that coming out of that, it's like I can contrast the light of Christ to the darkness of hell. And so it just gives you a very unique perspective. It gives you a very understanding heart, a very compassionate heart. I'm not judgmental towards people,
Mhm.
because I know life is difficult for everyone, and life hurts. It really does. And I'd rather be a guiding light to show people the way
Right.
versus sitting back judging like I'm better than everyone, because I know for a fact I'm better than no one. And
Right.
it's a good place to be.
Well, hey, maybe we should start a group at the coffee place.
Yeah, right. I've thought about it before, you know, as one of those things, like do a Celebrate Recovery. It's just so beneficial. It's really
Yeah.
beneficial.
Yeah. No, a community is definitely key to this as well. Definitely. But oh my gosh, Joey, thanks for sharing your story. I
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
so welcome. Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure meeting you and everyone else. And yeah, no, this has been great because I've never really told it fully in depth. So there you go, first
Yeah.
time.
First time, yay. And then like so many people will relate to you. Like the rock bottom stories that I am able to share with people are way more hard hitting and get to people way differently than just, like some stories like mine. I mean, mine hits people, but like at the same time, like these rock bottoms are like, oh my gosh, like I can get through it. I can be a different person.
Right, right. Even like when you just don't see how, like
Right.
you don't see how, I just suggest like go find, go start at CR, go start at CR. If you can't find a Celebrate Recovery, try and find a biblical church. Just go listen, just go sit. You don't even have to agree. You don't even have to believe. Just go find a pastor that can preach the word to you. It will do its job. The word will do its job.
We actually were going to Calvary Meridian for a while, and I really enjoyed him. And he was actually he was an addict before he was a pastor.
Yeah, that's
And I was
cool.
like, that is amazing because he had lived, like he can help people in so many more ways because he has overcome an addiction himself.
Right. Right. He's been on, they can definitely relate differently. There's this pastor, and my wife listens to him a lot. I'm not like a big read tons of books, listen to tons and tons of stuff. It's just not my jam. Um, but his name is Jeff Durbin, and he was a heroin addict. And I think he's got a church in Arizona, possibly. But if you look up Jeff Durbin, pastor, heroin addict or whatever, the dude is amazing. Like, and he can cut right through all the nonsense with the word. It's really impressive. And he goes out to the streets and does like street preaching, and and he comes from a place of, I'm no better than you. I know that. Like, I am no better than you. But listen to what I have to say. I can't believe this is me sitting here saying we need the word of God. But you do. And it cuts right through you. It cuts right through all your nonsense. It cuts through your heart. And it works. Like it works. Yeah.
It heals, obviously.
Obviously. Like,
Proof.
here I am healed, not by, again, anything I did. So,
right.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Well, I appreciate you, and I will definitely be in contact with you shortly after this.
All right. Well, good luck. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.